This trial, Vivacity-MG3, has been published these days in the Lancet Neurology with the results of the phase 3 study. The phase 3 comes after a phase 2 study that ended, that was published 1 year ago in Neurology, reporting the phase 2 results that were encouraging enough to proceed with the design of the phase 3. The phase 3 was a large study involving about 200 patients that were randomized to receive either the active compound, that is Nipocalimab, or placebo. Nipocalimab is a new compound belonging to the anti-neonatal Fc receptor group of targeted therapies that are under investigation for myasthenia. And the activity of this compound is, the mechanism of action is the reduction of circulating immunoglobulins in each patient, in which specific autoantibodies are included. If we block the metabolism, this particular mechanism of recycling of circulating IgG, automatically we increase the catabolism of antibodies, and as we observe in all these patients, we have a rapid reduction of circulating immunoglobulins and, of course, of specific autoantibodies. The importance and the difference of this compound compared to the other is that this is not a cycling therapy, as usually happens with other anti-neonatal Fc receptor compounds, but the Nipocalimab is administered every 2 weeks to our patient. And what we observed with quite a long observation, because the trial was quite long, it was 24 weeks, we observed a consistent, a clinically significant and meaningful improvement of the clinical picture in patients treated compared to with placebo. And this was obtained during the first month of treatment, and the improvement or at least stabilization of the disease was maintained up to the end of the study, that was 24 weeks. As far as safety is concerned, the adverse events that were in general, the compound was really well tolerated. The adverse events were included in the heading of infective disorders, were comparable to placebo, and no major side effects occurred. Only the deaths that were reported were totally unrelated to the active compound. So the results coming up from the phase 3 study are promising, and we are continuing to use the compound in the open label extension of the study that is ongoing, and we look forward to have this kind of clinical information, because this will be very important to parallel the clinical trial result with the real world clinical information. They are, generally speaking, all the FcRn are very effective, usually since the first weeks of treatment. This is very important because the saturation of the receptor is quite fast, and we usually see an important reduction of circulating IgG since the first weeks of treatment, because the system is blocked quite rapidly. This is quite important also not only from a biological point of view, but from a clinical point of view, because usually we are used to use and prescribe corticosteroids to our patient because it's quite fast in its mechanism of action, and the availability of something new that is targeted, as we used to say, that this does not mean specific, but it is targeted to a particular part of the pathophysiology of the disease, and is completely devoid of side effects from corticosteroids, is really very important for us and for the patients, of course. This is an important question, and it's not easy to answer because all the new targeted therapies are not all of them approved yet, and we have a lot of experience, but this experience comes from the open label extension or from early access programs. Some of them are already marketed, but others not. So I think we need some more time to have a clear idea. But what we can say so far is that the general activity, because there are no real world, no pragmatic, of course, there are pragmatic studies. It's too early to have pragmatic studies on such new compounds, and it's difficult to make comparison between different treatments at the same time. And so to be scientifically and clinically correct, I can say that the activity of the different compounds available is quite similar. The only thing we should take into consideration that some patients need a chronic treatment while other patients can do well with the recycling therapy. You know that some new compounds are given in periods of treatment, that is a cycling therapy, that is very good for some patients. They have long period of clinical improvement before they lose it, while there are patients that are, I would say, dependent on the readministration. So this is a subgroup of patients for which probably a chronic treatment able to stabilize the disease should be probably better. But this is just an initial opinion, what we are seeing in our patients so far, because we only have about 2 years of experience, and for some compounds even not more than 1 year. So it's quite early to give a final statement on the correct positioning. But this is what I can imagine so far. I think that the availability, no, the important thing of what we already has been already published is that the follow-up was quite long, because it's one of the longest trials available, because the clinical effect was assessed up to 24 weeks, and this is quite a lot, but this is the chronic autoimmune disease. So we need to continue the observation, and I do hope that further data will come up from the open label extension study that is still ongoing. Even today, I had 2 patients treated with Nipocalimab. They are doing well. So I think that the data coming up from the study will be confirmed, and there will be also some sub-studies with evaluation of several parameters that can be assessed and subscale that have been used, part of the clinical scales, the effect on different muscle groups. There are so many information that we can get from the trial and also from the open label extension. But I think that the quality of the observation of the data that will be available, I do hope will be convincing to get the final approval, because we need also this kind of targeted therapy compared to the other ones. I think it's very important to have a new therapeutic tool that proved to be effective, that proved to be able to stabilize the disease, that was well tolerated. And I think it's very important to have different tools available, because what we are seeing that patients with the disease is always the same, but the behavior of the disease in each patient is not frequently is not the same. So the availability of different compounds, even with similar mechanisms of action, but with different schedule of administration, I think will be very important. And now, if we consider that we have both complement inhibitors, several of them, and we also have neonatal Fc receptor inhibitors, more than one, with different treatment schedule, amplifies a lot the tool of therapies that are available at present for our patient. This is very important. It's a very important moment for the disease, because after I would say more than since the 60s and the 70s, there haven't been so many new treatments for this disease. So since 2017, there has been an explosion of new treatments, and so many possibilities to improve the quality of life of our patients. So I think we still have a lot of work to do, because when we finish a trial, this is not the end of the story, but actually sometimes it is the beginning, because we have to use it in the patient we see in our everyday life, in our outpatient clinics. And so patients are usually much more complicated with many more comorbidities compared to patients that are included in clinical trials. So it is even more important to see the effect of these compounds in the real world. So then we are ready also with Nipocalimab to gather data on this new drug.